Hello, I'm Martine Croxall. This is the Iran War Today, our briefing that brings you up to date with all you need to know on the US-Iran war. Let's start with some of today's key developments. A ninth consecutive night of strikes. The US says it targeted Iranian missile and drone launch sites as well as communication networks. The US president says the attacks are in honour of 3 US troops killed in recent days. It's emerged that 2 of those 3 US service members were killed in Iranian strikes on a US base in Jordan. The third was killed after an Iranian attack in northern Iraq. Iran has retaliated once again, firing at US interests in the Gulf. Both Kuwait and Bahrain have reported incoming fire. Meanwhile, oil rises to its highest price in a month after Iran said it had also attacked 2 oil tankers trying to transit through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, let's start with the latest on the 9th consecutive night of US strikes against Iran. The US president threatening every time Iran kills an American soldier, they will pay for that killing many times over. Well, it comes as the identities of 2 of the 3 US service members killed in Iranian attacks in recent days have been released. They've been named as 25-year-old Lieutenant Tyler Feehan and 19-year-old Private Isabella Gonzalez. Speaking late on Sunday, Donald Trump said the latest strikes were in their honour and that ongoing attacks were aimed at further degrading Iran's missile and drone capabilities.
Well, we feel very badly, but you know, those great people, those great patriots were out there fighting that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Iran has been very, very badly damaged. They've lost everything almost militarily. They've got very little left. They've got some missiles. They've got some drones. They've got some manufacturing ability, not much. We control the Strait. They don't control anything. So we'll see what happens, but we hit them very hard again tonight. And we did that in honor of the probably 3. It's probably 3 as opposed to 2 great patriots.
Let's speak to our chief North America correspondent, Gary O'Donoghue. Gary, what sense do you get of whether these US military operations are likely to continue?
Well, we've had, as you said, 9 nights of this, and they do seem to be expanding geographically where they're hitting in Iraq. They were focusing on those defensive areas and the ability of Iran to launch strikes and to control the Strait of Hormuz. But they do seem to be expanding further across the country now. Iran says that they hit a city where there's a civil nuclear power plant being built. Now that would suggest some escalation, but at the same time we are getting reports, but there are still back channels open that the US and Iran may still be talking through, potentially through intermediaries, and that the Pakistanis are still significantly involved. So that perhaps prevents this from escalating into a sort of full-blown conflict that we had at the beginning of this war. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of hope. And of course, for the president, the costs keep rising, particularly politically. He's going to have to attend the return of some of those deceased military personnel at Dover Air Force Base tomorrow. That is something that impacts the American public. We're seeing gas prices that have gone just above an average of $4 a gallon again today. That's a psychological thing for people feeling the pinch through the cost of living and the upcoming elections where Republicans could be punished for that. So you can see this sort of concatenation, this conglomeration of factors that are putting increasing pressure on the White House. And of course, I keep saying this, and I say this repeatedly, you can be the biggest, mightiest military in the world. You can shoot and strength everyone else. But if you're a democracy, you do have to reckon with public opinion, and public opinion can be the thing that is the constraint, that is the thing that turns something popular into something unpopular. And we do know that there is a 20-point gap at the moment, largely down Democrat and Republican lines, but not just, among independents too, of people who are against this war versus people who support this war now.
You mentioned public opinion. So how is public opinion changing when people are seeing more American service personnel killed as we have in recent days?
Well, it's still crystallised along party lines, as you'd expect, with independents more sort of erring towards the not very supportive. But I think, it can be very, very fluid. Those who are loyal to the president, the sort of, the real core of his MAGA base will remain so. But also, those are still people who have to pay for gasoline. There are still people who have to pay the rent on their homes. They have to pay their car loans as well. And increasingly, there are signs that that cost of living issue is becoming more and more important as those elections. And that's certainly what Republicans feel. They feel this pressure when they go back to their districts as polling day gets nearer and nearer in November. They're already only really holding the House of Representatives by an incredibly slim margin. And if they lose it, what are the consequences? Well, you might think, well, Democrats, can't really get much legislation through, even if they control the House of Representatives, because they're still the Senate and they're still the White House, etc. That's all true. You can still get gridlock. But what you can get is another 2 years where Democrats control key committees in the House of Representatives, and they can pile on the investigations. They can swamp the administration with subpoenas and demands for this, that, and the other. And that can make life for what is the lame duck period of a president in his second term, that can make that very, very unpleasant.
Gary, thank you very much. Gary O'Donoghue. Well, while the strikes have been a daily occurrence over the last week or so, America's top diplomat has suggested the US is leaving the door open for a diplomatic solution. Speaking as he left the US bound for Asia, Marco Rubio said Iran was not honouring the terms of the Memorandum of Understanding signed by both sides in June, which stated Iran would allow safe passage of commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, despite this, Secretary Rubio said the US remained ready to talk.
The United States always remains open to a diplomatic solution. We've tried multiple times with Iran, and we'll continue to try. If that door opens, we'll be happy to see it open. But and they continue to send signals that they want to talk, that they want to negotiate, but their behavior is what we're responding to. And their behavior is they're launching missiles and drones against ships, including tonight.
Well, as we've discussed, Iran has continued to target US assets across the Gulf in response to last night's US strikes. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps saying that they'd hit targets in Syria, Jordan and Kuwait. Sirens have also been heard in Bahrain, where authorities say air navigation systems had been targeted by Iranian drones. Officials said air traffic had not been affected. Our correspondent Yolande Nell is monitoring the situation from Jerusalem.
US Central Command has said that its strikes are aimed at degrading Iranian military capabilities that have been used to attack commercial vessels and civilian mariners in the Strait of Hormuz. And this morning, Iranian attacks were also reported targeting both Bahrain and Kuwait. Once again, these are two countries that are close allies of the US in this region, and they both have US military bases there. Now, in the Strait of Hormuz, still very much at the heart of the ongoing tensions, the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said that it had targeted and immobilized two oil tankers that were passing through what it said was the unsafe route on the south of the waterway. And now maritime security officials have confirmed that there is one vessel that is currently adrift. The crew managed to get off safely after it was hit by a projectile, starting a fire. There are not said to be any environmental consequences of this at the moment, but all of this has really helped to push up oil prices to this 1 month high.
Yolande Nell in Jerusalem. Well, images of destruction, a result of US strikes inside Iran, are emerging, some of which show severe infrastructure damage. BBC Verify has verified video showing what appears to be a destroyed desalination plant in the city of Jask, close to the Gulf of Oman. Speaking on Monday, Iran's foreign ministry said the country would continue to defend its dignity and sovereignty, He also commented on Marco Rubio's remarks regarding a diplomatic solution, saying the US version of diplomacy often translated to intimidation and threats. Well, with us now is BBC Persian's Gia Gol. Gia, what are officials in Iran saying about these US strikes? There's clearly no trust.
Well, the official message from Tehran has been one of defiance. Military and political leaders, one after another, they have come, they say, if there is further attack, there will be a response. And I think they are trying to convey a message of unity amongst the Iranian leadership. But the reality is there is a division between some of them. Some of the hardliners, they believe they should stand up to the US, they should attack and hold more, do not go to negotiation table in hopes of gaining more points and also project power in the region. In the same time, Iran says they have been the victim of aggression and it is aimed at domestic audience, time for unity, rally around the flag, and this is what we need at this point of time.
What's the mood inside Iran then, with the government holding firm, as you say, at least publicly?
I think, obviously, Iranian people are suffering at this point of time. Iran, more than 90% of Iran's gas and oil export going through the Strait of Hormuz, choking the Strait of Hormuz is choking Iranian economy. And Iran economy is crippling and is much worse than 2 months ago. That's why many people are worried with the escalation of the war and even the news of the reports of the US is sending more military hardware to the region. They are afraid by targeting infrastructure, by targeting power plant or petroleum stations or factories, this might make their life much worse than it is. That's why many people are worried. And I think the regime is also worried. Just last week, they execute another political prisoners who was arrested in January's uprising. I think by executing those protesters, they want to send a message to other young people, do not come back to the street, otherwise you will face harsh punishment.
We talk about the Iranian people as if they're just some homogenous whole. They're not. There will be different people in different parts of the country for different reasons who want this to stop just so they can get back to normal, irrespective of regime change. How mixed are the views?
I think there are different views. At the beginning of the war, obviously, many people supported. They were hoping maybe this war end the regime once for all. But when the time passed by, infrastructure was hit by US and Israel, many people opposed it. So it doesn't translate to supporting the regime, but they were against the war in the same time. But also regime has some part of the population supporting the regime. But the reality is, the situation, what we saw in January, it shows how many millions of people are against the regime. They came to the street in January. We saw it. We saw the report, how many thousands of people were killed.
Gia, thank you so much, Gia Gol from BBC Persian. Whether you're joining us on YouTube, Sounds or on TV, thanks for your time. That's it for this edition of the Iran War Today.